So I think we're ready.
Good morning. Good morning. Hello, everyone. Hi, Ngozi. Hi, Dr. Gabriel. Hi, Dr. Adira Adefu. It's so good to have you all here. So we'll just go through this conversation as an open discussion. This is a conversation I'm really excited about having, primarily because, it touches on a subject that we've all been having in like silos, right? So law firms are having these conversations with their lawyers. Lawyers within themselves are also having these conversations within themselves. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity to, bring this curated conversation to the larger audience, right? And then get, shared experiences of the lawyers that started their practice in Nigeria and then extended, their journeys outside to other jurisdictions. This would also be open to questions from attendees. So please be sure to put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll definitely read it to the panelists after. So I would love to introduce the two panelists on this conversation today. We have Dr. Gabriel Onagurua, and we also have Ngozi Agboti. So this is, again, like I said, it's conversational. So I would really appreciate if you would introduce yourselves and, tell us what your current role is and how you would describe your job function today.
Ngozi, do you want to go first?
No, the doctors must go first.
If you insist. Again, thank you for the introduction, Carrie. My name is Gabriel Onagurua. I'm a partner at Olanu Ajayi UK LLP, which is Africa's first international law office in London. Prior to that, I was a lawyer at the law firm of White & Case. I was there for over a decade. Prior to that, I was probably in studies, and prior to that, I worked at campus in Nigeria for my NYSC. And I studied at the University of Ibadan and the University of Cambridge. I'm happy to be here to share insights with Ngozi, Carrie, and the rest of you participating on this call.
Thank you. Ngozi, would you want to take this over?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ngozi Agboti. I currently work for the IFC. I'm primarily a treasury lawyer. And I guess today's conversation will take us through how I got here. Before the IFC, I worked for the African Development Bank. And before that, Udodo Mandelo Asage. And let me stop adding before I date myself. Let me stop adding to the places I've worked. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having us, Carrie.
Thank you. So yeah, just following on your introductions, it'll be great to, share your career trajectory. So starting from when you got called to the bar, or when you started in Nigeria, and what really started off your career path to where you presently are in the US as you are, Ngozi, and in the UK as you are, Dr. Gabriel. So Dr. Gabriel, we want to take this on. So from how you started from your university experience and making the transition to work with Olanu Ajayi UK.
So for me, well, that has got to start at the University of Ibadan, right? I think someone just spoke to me once when I was there, saying I was one of the best lawyers in my class. And he said, what happened to the world? Why don't you want to be one of the best lawyers in the world? And that for me was just like it really jolted me and he said, you're doing contract law, it's the same contract law being done in England. So when you're taught in your class, are you limiting yourself to just your class notes? Or are you picking up the latest textbooks? Are you augmenting what you're being taught in class? Will that reflect on what you're doing in class? And I just took that on. Right? So when I finish from class, I go to the library, pick up the text, and compare my notes. And that attitude then meant that even when I was in 300, 400 level, I was applying for a master's at the University of Cambridge. So I was applying for a master's way before I was done. And believe me, I got my first admission at my 400 level to come and do a master's before I finished. So I saw that possibility that it was possible to just be international, right? And all in that vein, I also then started thinking, okay, English is the global law of finance. I know, but in Africa, only 17 countries speak English. So I registered at the Alliance Française. But I didn't go so far, but I'm just saying, when I started to just try to prepare myself from the get-go, 200 level, I'll stay back in Ibadan, go to an Alliance Française in Ibadan, try to brush up my French. I can't really still talk about law in French. I'm still learning through Duolingo. But I think that we're just showing a mindset of trying to be international from day one. And that really helped. You're not limiting yourself to just Nigerian law. Thankfully, we are still a common law jurisdiction. You can still compare notes based on what's going on elsewhere. And I think with admission, basically just with my mindset was LSE, was Cambridge, did my Nigerian law school, but it was in my mind that, you want to take it international. So that was the trajectory. And then I followed through. I had a miracle. I landed in Cambridge somehow. I was there, I did a master's, I did a PhD. But just before I started the PhD, I got the offer to work on writing case. And then I deferred that, completed the PhD, then went back to writing case and stayed there for over a year. So that was the trajectory. I think it's just a mindset, and you can develop it. It didn't come naturally. Someone you need to talk to. And that's where guidance counseling comes, where people only react to what they see. And even in making the choice, even though I knew I wanted to go international, I really didn't know what area of law. When you go to law school, we all do that. We do that court attachment, right? We all do that. And I went down like, this is what I'm going to be doing. Never. I thought I was going to be, at some point, I thought I'll be, barrister, international barrister. But having gone there during that process, I hear that's not all there is. For those who are the patients, they get to the top of it and enjoy that practice. But for me as a junior lawyer, waiting in those courtrooms, not really seeing the action, just getting all the adjournments. And then I was invited to template at the time. And I just did this research for a client over the course of less than a month. And I saw that deal start and finish. We were advising on the invocation of the license. When I was privileged to see the deal, I'm like, what? For 1 week of work, that's the deal? What are we talking about? Okay, I think this is what I'm going to be doing. And then, I got interested in it. I learned about development. I saw the power of finance as it relates to development. I realized the disadvantaged position of Africa. Then law started to make a lot of meaning to me to say, okay, if you become a development finance lawyer, basically focused on project development, all of those things that you see on the continent, perhaps you can be a part of making a change. You can be a part of, the development that Africa really needs. And it started from just the exposure that I got from a law firm in Nigeria, from a conversation that I had as a 100 student in the university. So I think, again, serendipity in a way, but then I also open my mind to listen and then to act.
Thank you so much, Ngozi.
I think I'll stop there so I don't answer all the other questions.
So yes, I'd love to hear from you as well on your journey and how, starting from Nigeria, you can start from your, educational background as well, from starting in university in Nigeria and then making the transition, because I know you had to, move around in Africa as well before joining the IFC. So could you just put us through that particular journey?
Sure. Somewhat in contrast to Dr. Nagaru, my journey I wasn't nearly as strategic. I'll say it that way. So I went to school in Ghana. Actually went to University of Ghana because daddy's girl had to go to the same school that my father went to. And that, I just really enjoyed being a law student, very much so enjoyed being a student of law. Came back to Nigeria, went to law school, started practicing, and to be honest, I didn't love it. I found that the practice of law and the study of law were very different, completely different. But I kept at it. So I had the opportunity, actually started practicing law being an intellectual property lawyer. I worked with Jackson Etienne for a couple of years. And at that firm, had the opportunity to pivot and start working on commercial law transactions. And I moved on to Dodo Mambello Osage. And what I think is law firms are such a good place to find what you're good at. And I really encourage everyone to look at firms in that way. I certainly didn't appreciate at the time that that's what you're doing. When you're staffed on different deals, you're working on banking one day and another day you're doing a land deal. That's exactly what you're getting to do. What feels like a lot of work is really a lot of opportunity. So my stars aligned in that at UUBO, I got to do a lot of work with capital markets. And that became, without my knowing it, it became the thing I was good at, the thing I understood, how to work with regulators. And only because I did that work, that kind of work, did I get the opportunity to at first go and consult with the AFDB. And while I worked at AFDB, the part of the department that works on capital markets transactions also does derivatives work. So of course you can't pick and choose, right? And then so while at the AFDB, I got the opportunity to learn about derivatives. And this is a good place to also say that I think I really have benefited from older colleagues that were generous with their knowledge and their time. Because you start from scratch, right? I had never read an ISDA before I went to the AFDB. But someone took time to explain, to staff me on the deal, to at first supervise my deals, to get me to understand it. And so when the opportunity came to work with the IFC, I only got that opportunity because I had then learned how to work with derivatives. So now, because you've asked the question, when I look back on it, it's kind of like a jigsaw. One thing really led to the next. I wish I were nearly as strategic as you were, Dr. Nagorua, but I wasn't. It's only because of what I learned in one place that I then got to work in the next place or on the next thing. So I am a firm believer that the thing you want to do next is going to come from the thing you're doing now. However not fun, not interesting you may think it is, you should bother to learn it. You should bother to be engaged. That's been my story.
Thank you. And, I want to just continue on that same line, and I want to continue with you, Ngozi, and that's on finding that multi-layering of like experience, right? Because a lot of people don't want to have to gather like several things at the same time. You kind of have like this straight and narrow you want to go on, and you want to start that off from the very beginning in your career, especially people that are kind of certain on what they want to do from the get-go. How do you find that's like being a multi-potentialite in that aspect? How are you able to lay that on to then your position with the IFC? And, do you still find that was, a positive, or do you find that you would advise people to have as much experience in diverse areas of industry or practice to then be able to channel that to, the particular position like you presently occupy?
I think that for us as lawyers, the principles are pretty much the same. Wherever you choose to employ them, you must learn analysis, you must learn research, you must learn to, I have an old boss that used to say, you must learn to follow the money. Whatever transaction you're doing, where's the money going? How are you going to get paid? So those basics, wherever you start out, I think we should learn them. How much can you learn? I don't think you need to try 10 things. I don't believe that you do, but I think you need to try. I think that all of us think we know, but you don't know that you do. So I remember the first time, you can imagine switching from IP to reading a full loan financing document. It was very strange. And quite frankly, I didn't want to do it. But I'm glad that I tried. I don't know that I've certainly never met anyone that said, I wish I never tried that new thing. I think you should try. You may think you know exactly what you want to do. And in fact, I think that is the prerogative of the young. You always think you know. Plot twist, you don't know. Try. Try and go to that lands registry when they send you. Just try. You might find, a whole career behind that opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Dr. Nakarura, so my question to you is on comparing the landscape of energy and infrastructure in Nigeria to your practice in the UK, right? Because it's a firm that is already established in Nigeria that you work for, but the UK office. And so you're able to have that, balance between how what you do presently affects, the infrastructure space in Nigeria. How would you compare that? And, how do you see it evolving in comparison to how it was while you were still in Nigeria?
Okay, I'll try and answer that question as nicely as possible. But I would say, I grew up in Nigeria, let's start from there. I went to university in Nigeria. I know the Nigerian landscape to a great extent. Well, like when I was a kid, I had 100K. I was a big boy back there if I had it. So I'm just trying to do the background that yes, I understand the Nigerian terrain. Yes, it's true. I went on to do the master's and the PhD at Cambridge, joined an English law firm. And English law, fortunately for me and for anyone else who's looking to do it, it is the law, we claim it is the law of global finance. So I'm not just looking at energy and infrastructure in Nigeria. Yes, I'm looking at Nigeria, but I can also look at Angola. I can also look at Ghana. I can also look at Gambia. And that's where, the Olaniwajai office in London, it's a very strategic move in that regard because, yes, you're going to do a lot of Nigerian deals. But the idea is not to restrict yourself to Nigerian deals. It's to be able to use that office as a fulcrum for the rest of Africa where English law is going, or being manned by Africans and people who love Africa and who like to work in Africa. That office, I've done a deal in Ghana, for example, the acquisition of ACA, advising Sue's lecture with that deal. There are other deals in the pipeline that we're working on in Mexico, Kenya, Rwanda, from the London office in London. So I hear you. There's a connection between UK and Nigeria, but really what makes it really sweet and really, exciting to someone like me is that knowledge that you've acquired in England, that knowledge that you now have, you can take it with you across the whole continent, where English law is the government law of transaction. Which means, for where we don't have an office, we're still going to be working with local firms. And, in each jurisdiction, we're working with Ghanaian firms, we're working with, even in Nigeria, we're not only working with Olaniwajai, we're working with Templars, we're working with Bloomfield, we're working with Bawani Godalo, deals that we've done, concluded over the last, 26 months. So it's an exciting journey for me, and also for the firm to see what is possible as an African brand looking to go global. For me, that was the attraction to be able to join that brand. And the truth is, you're not joining a B-list firm. You're joining an A-list firm that wants to retain its A-list, identity even when it goes global. And that's why it's very attractive for me. And that's why I'll pick that firm over a B-list firm anywhere else. And I'll take it, I'll put it in the same pedestal as any firm that says it's A-list wherever else in the world. Because this is an A-list African firm in Nigeria, looking to really take that spirit of excellence globally. And I want to be part of that story, When we start to write that story about African jurisprudence, African law firm, African business going global, this is a major development part of it. Just as our banks have become Pan-African with offices, say, in the major financial centers, I think gradually our law firms may start to mature to that point where we are also in the major commercial centers where African businesses are being transacted, and we are also in all the major commercial hubs across Africa. So that's the exciting thing for me to say, yeah, it's infrastructure, yes, it's energy, yes, it's English law, but I can bring that knowledge to Nigeria as well as Ghana, as well as Gambia, as well as Kenya. And we're doing that. But to then narrow in on your question, to compare the terrain, I'll be honest with you, in my 10 decades at Whiting Case, as an energy and infrastructure lawyer, I only worked on a project in England once in 10 years that I spent at Whiting Case. So deploying English law, I did more deals in Africa and the Middle East. I did just one week. So nothing is changing. I'm just going to an African platform to do a lot of this English government deals all across the continent. So that's where the international nature of my practice then comes to play. That is where it becomes really exciting. That's where I'm being a part of development across Africa. For me, it's a meeting of passion, a meeting of purpose, a meeting of, and then you get rewarded for it as well. I think when you're good at it, you get repeat transactions coming your way. And, we're pushing the spirit of excellence in Africa. And I'm sure many of you listening, be part of that. You can and you will become part of that story to push African excellence to a global stage. It is possible. We've started, but this is not the end. It's only the beginning.
Sure. And following up on that, because you really highlighted on, the multi-jurisdictionality of what you do. And my question is, how are you able to, what key insights would you give the Nigerian lawyer that's looking to tow the same path, right? So what would be the key opportunities that can open up for someone that's presently either working or studying in Nigeria to then have these kinds of opportunities? That's one for the lawyers. Secondly is for law firms that are looking to replicate what Olaniwoja has done in being able to position itself very strategically to, advise on cross-border transactions of the sort, right? So what would your thoughts or your advice or insights be to, managing partners or firms that are trying to do the same thing to then be able to recreate what it is that you've done?
For individuals, law students, lawyers who are here, I think Ngozi touched on it. I think sometimes until when we get to where we are, and then you look back, you're like, oh, there was a purpose why I did that. There was a purpose why I did that. Some people say it's serendipity. Some people just say it's chance. Some people say you're built for this. For a lawyer who's a Nigerian student, as I say, he is internationally minded as he can be. It is the same contract law. English law is speculative authority in Nigeria. Even Australian law, you can break it down as speculative authority in Nigeria. To be intentionally international in your out. When that lecturer gives you a case scenario, don't limit yourself to what justice told you. Look at scenarios in other jurisdictions where it will make sense and incorporate it into your work. That way, you're making yourself stand out so that you get excellent grades, and you're making those law firms, you're making yourself attractive to the top law firms of those excellent grades. Then when you become a lawyer, keep an open mind. You may think you want to do project finance when you get in. You may just be putting disputes in. Sometimes some people are just stuck in their ways and disputes, they never want to leave disputes. Some people just want to be in bank finance, never want to leave bank finance. And as I say, as the benefit of hindsight, you may have just missed an opportunity. It may not serve you now. You may not understand why you're doing it now. To give you, I didn't speak about it fully, but the honest truth is when I did my NYSC, I started first at the local government in Jos. I was there for one day, and then I left because I got called by Nikon. And then I went there, went in the house, did that for 2 months, and then I left. And then I joined Campus. And I was there for 8 months. And then I left. And then I joined KPMG right after the end of my master's. And I was there for 3 months before I then went out. So I'd seen 4 things before I started the master's. And I knew where I wanted to be. And even when I got to where I wanted to be in the law firm, you have to do a rotation. I already had this idea of development in Africa, therefore project finance. I knew it. But I still did a capital market seat. I still did, the corporate seat. Still doing something that was just, but am I using trustee still today? Yes, I can. Now I'm a partner. I don't only bring deals in my area of specialization. I bring deals from every area of law. So you must see law as a T, or how would I call it? No, it's capital I. So at the base of it, try and get knowledge as broadly as you can. In the middle of it, you specialize in one role. And by the time you get to the top of it, you need to bring business from everything again. Even though you're your specialization in one area, but you have to develop business all across the field. So it's a capital I. From the beginning, keep an open mind. Do as much as you can. Specialize in one area. At the top of it, you're going to open up all over again. right? So take every opportunity that comes your way. That's for individuals, and don't say no. Don't say I just want to be a bank finance lawyer. Don't ever bring that IP matter to me. You just never know where it will come in handy. Maybe to be a conversation on a plane with a multi-billionaire who's having an IP matter when you become a partner, and just because you did that stint, you can then stick to it. You can then win that mandate, take it to your friend, to your firm, and get a partner who's specializing in it to do it, or you will be the relationship partner. There's a benefit for bringing that mandate to you. So keep an open mind, be as internationally intentional as you can. Will be my two advice for individuals. For law firms, I say don't bite more than you can chew, but again, be intentional. The idea of setting up a law office, believe you me, if I wanted to write a book on the experience of what we faced so far, the non-tariff barriers, the tariff barriers, the regulatory barriers, I would write a book. But do you want to be putting all that kind of information on LinkedIn, or do you want to be accepted by the people around you that, yes, we want this firm to succeed in London? If we were putting out all the negative press about the bad things or all the difficulty we faced in establishing the firm, do you think the UK regulatory authorities would really want us to stay? They probably wouldn't. So, but now, guess what? We're being invited as a poster child of what is possible in the UK for anyone who dares, right? But it didn't start like that. We faced quite a lot of challenges. So for anyone looking to set up that office, be aware that there will be challenges, but be prepared for it as well, because it's not a cheap venture to get top lawyers from top firms to jump on your platform. It's significant investment, and you must have the firepower to go for quite a number of years, even if you don't win any mandates. So don't start it and stop it. I think that's a bigger failure in my view, right? And don't do that thing where you're not properly planned. You need to properly plan it before making the move. And do it properly. The idea that you want to send just any partner from your legal office to go and sit in London, while it might be okay for certain areas of law, it cannot apply for other areas of law. So you need to get the specialists in that your clients would really respect and want to work with. But to be able to do that, it's actually intensive. And people just don't, well, I know I didn't just think about it 5 years ago. It's been something in the pipeline for decades before it was then done when it was done. So for any law firm, any managing partner thinking about it, set the goal, start. I think it makes sense for more firms to do this across Africa. I think the AFCFTA would make it even more compelling why you should do it. I think the diversity call across the industry will make it more compelling. The Nigerian firm has done it, but you can expect other African firms, other network of firms to think about it. You have to think about the pros and cons, your referral work, which generate yourself. So you need to do all that analysis and be sure. And some firms are just happy being in just one jurisdiction, and there's nothing wrong with that. Northern May is just in England. They're not looking to go outside of England, and they're respected globally. And it's okay to just be a Nigerian firm, respected in Nigeria, and stay that way. But if you want to go international and you want to represent the Nigerian flag, I'd say put proper planning into it and do it really well, so that the excellence that is African can be showcased through your initiative rather than otherwise.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, if there's one thing we know is that the Nigerian people are like Nigeria's greatest exports, right? So it's only right that we have, a clear idea of how it is we want to represent ourselves wherever else we find ourselves practicing, either as a group or a firm or an individual. So, Ngozi, I'd love to bring this to you, and it's going to be in reverse. So this is actually asking, do you have any ways that you found you either had to course correct, or any regrets, or any, particular challenges that you found in making the transition? I know a lot of people find that, or maybe even people that maybe eventually come out to maybe get their further education or something, and it's like, oh, I wish I did this earlier, right? Or is there any other kind of, course correction you had to do in, getting the path to where you are presently? That will be helpful to anyone that's looking to do the same thing.
I don't know if I would say course correct. I'm not sure. I think that everyone's journey, I mean, even just listening to Dr. Nagara, his journey is so different from mine. I would encourage all of us to really trust your journey. Trust that if you have done a master's right out of university, I mean, that's something I always wonder about, how quickly we go off to do a master's degree. Just being Nigerian, it's very much the thing. You're done with undergrad, you go get a master's. I think if you speak to a lot of less young people, they might question that. They may very well still do a master's, but perhaps they would have done an MBA and not an LLM. Perhaps they would have done an MSc, but there are factors around that, right? From the female perspective, very many times, if your education is being financed by your parents, and quite frankly, you don't know if your husband is going to pay for masters, you go and do your masters when your parents are ready to pay for it. I don't know that we often find that the master's degree or the postgraduate degree you do right out of school is necessarily the same one you would have done if you had gone off to work first. So that's something I'd say bear in mind. It's never harmful to go ahead and get the postgraduate, but would it be exactly what you would have chosen after you had worked at a firm for 5 years? I think if we do the numbers, we may find that people would have made slightly different choices. So I'd say that. Course correct. I just like to say that I think we underestimate the training we have as Nigerian lawyers. We think that sitting in the US or in certain institutions or sitting in the UK, we need something different, something other than what we are. I haven't found that to be true. I think that we are quite well able to adapt to whatever we find. I find that we have a lot of grit and that beyond anything else, that's what is required. The very basics. Can you read a contract? When something doesn't sit well, will you find your voice? Will you be able to, just ask the question? Just ask the question, like, can we think about this, to be unafraid? So I think that that is something I would encourage all of us to do. Ask the stupid question. And when you're new, it's a superpower because nobody expects you to know it. So just ask the question that maybe I missed something, but then ask your question. I have found more often than not that even when your question will always be useful because there's someone else in the room that really didn't understand it. And you help the person who even has more knowledge than you think through how they got to the end that they've gotten to. So I don't think that there is course correction. I'd encourage us to think of it as adaptation. You may have to adapt. Your opinion will be asked for a little bit more. And be brave enough to ask the question.
So I'm going to follow up on asking questions. So there's something I always say that, people are your first infrastructure, right? Like before layering on most other things like the qualifications, your additional degrees, whatever it's going to take, it's people that you're first going to try and leverage on. Do you also find that that's, a positive statement in that fact? And how have you found people to be your first infrastructure? Like how have you leveraged either your network or your, alumni or, friends or, other people that have practiced in the same area across the different places that you've worked?
Carrie, I don't like thinking of people as infrastructure because people don't like to be used, right? Infrastructure speaks to me as things we use. And I don't like to be thought of that way. I think that people are definitely a resource. I'll give you that. I believe that relationships are currency. But your first resource, I'd push back on that a little and say, good old-fashioned work, do some work. It's a lesson I've learned recently. When you say help speaks to you have started doing something yourself, then someone can help you. But if you haven't started, what you're really asking for is that someone does work that you should do. So I try to bear that in mind. So yeah, I would say that people as infrastructure, it makes me a bit uncomfortable because no one wants to be used. But people will be, I think that we should definitely look at each other as resources. And in using every resource, you should bear in mind that you can run out, right? A resource can finish, a resource can be abused, you can use it wrongly. And we should be very careful about how we tap into those resources. I don't want to be the friend that is always asking Kerry for something or only calls Kerry or sends Kerry an email because Kerry needs to do something for Ngozi. It needs to be symbiotic. I want to also help Kerry. I want Kerry, when she sees my name in her inbox or on her phone, to not think, what does she want? Sometimes I want to be helping you. Sometimes I want to say, hey, Kerry, I heard about this. I think you would be good for it. But I will only do that because I know your work. And I'd say even more importantly, that I know your character. I know you will deliver. I know you're not sitting around expecting someone to do something for you. You're willing to put in the work. So yes, I'm with you. Relationships are super important, but I don't want to think of any of us as non-living infrastructure.
Okay, so being able to layer on speaking to people as your first contact and being able to use, either their experience or trying to understand how they're able to guide you on your own path in the ways that they have experienced their own journeys as well, is basically the building block of even trying to make a decision of what you're going to do next. So in that regard, would you find that you had such people to then have those building relationships or those budding conversations? So not infrastructure in terms of, inanimate or non-living. It is that you haven't quite seen the entire pathway and you're trying to build on that and hopefully tapping into the resource of people that have gone through these journeys or people that, are able to advise you or then even speak to other people that have gone through those journeys. So did you have such people at the beginning of your career to then, be able to tap into their?
I did. I did. And I'm particularly happy you asked me this question because I'm very proud to say that, so many of them were women. And I think we get such a bad rap, but my experience, my career has been littered with people that were generous, like I said, with their time, with their intellect, and they really didn't have to be super busy people that really owed me nothing, quite frankly, but they made time. I think very first on that list, I would put, and I don't know if I should name names, but I guess it's okay. So I remember being a master's student and I was so sure to take us back to something you shared. I was so sure I wanted to be an intellectual property lawyer. No one could tell me anything. I was going to do my LLM in IP law and that was it. And Mrs. Jackson Steele happened to be the mother to a very good friend of mine who was not herself a lawyer. She took one look at me in that way that Nigerian parents do and said, your parents paid for you to do masters. You say you're doing IP, you're not serious. Better fill that form very well. I'm so grateful that she did that because it was a very sarky, the way Nigerian parents can just finish you with 2 sentences. That was all she said. It wasn't this deep mentoring conversation. She just said, I think you should do something more general. I did that. And I'm grateful that I did. And when I was in Jackson Etianedu, Mrs. Shade Lanio, who's passed now, she let me pivot from IP to commercial law, even though she was my primary report when I was working from commercial law to IP rather, even though she was my primary report in IP. So she had to take on this person who didn't have any experience and she had to teach me. Again, when I joined UUBO, and gosh, I have way too many people to shout out at UUBO, so I won't even start, but there have always been senior professionals who would have a conversation or mark up a piece of work in red as it needs to be, or purple as case may be, and would correct. And they weren't always, sometimes I think when we think about people that mentor us and people that have conversations of us, we very often have this fairy tale imagination where it's a one-on-one, it's a monthly check-in. I have never had that. But I have had the absolute best of many senior colleagues. And sometimes it's a WhatsApp call, sometimes it's exchanging text across firms that I've never worked with, some people I've never done a transaction with, but they make time. And I think it's earned. I think if I call you, Kerry, and I say, Kerry, do you have 15 minutes? And I keep my questions within 15 minutes, next time you might give me time. I think if you give me advice and I take it, and I would say, especially when I don't like it, chances are you'll give me advice again. So I'd encourage I think people that have a one-on-one kind of mentoring relationship are very blessed. They're very lucky. But for those of us who don't have the one person, please don't say you have no mentors. You have many. And I don't think that proximity means mentorship. People mentor us through books. People mentor us through op-eds. Sometimes it's a conversation you come across. Sometimes you work a transaction with someone. Take the mentorship where you find it. It doesn't have to be this one-on-one, super special. This person is my mentor. You have photos with the person. And please don't only think that it's your seniors that can mentor you. We all have those super wise friends that just set you straight, you know. Take advantage of wisdom wherever you find it. Don't decide what it has to look like, the package it has to come in. Be open, say yes more.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Nagaro, I also want to ask you the same question on how you found conversations with people, either at the beginning of your career or making the transition to, say, White and Case, and how it was helpful in the journey that you've been on up until where you are presently. Did you find that was helpful? Did you find that it was able to kind of chart you according to a certain path? And what would you advise in having those kinds of conversations as well?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that question goes to the root of my person, actually. So my first mentor, I would say, was my brother. And I'd expect that to be the case for many people listening and being a part of this conversation. We're just a brain track, right? There was a time when I wanted to go to school, and I was in a boarding house, secondary school, and I didn't get all that I wanted. And honestly, my mom probably just did not want to give it to me, but maybe she just did not have it. But I was a kid, and my mother came into my room where I was crying, where I said, I didn't get what I wanted, and said, it just may be that mommy doesn't have it. But you're in a position, at least you're in good school, you're going to good school. How can you make sure that when it comes to you, when your kid is having you the same question, you're not making your kid cry because you don't have it? It's just because you don't want to give it to the kid. Those are two very different things. So you have to take your education seriously. It's your only way out of all of this, where you're going to just excel. And he was excelling very much. So yeah, Ngozi said I was very purposeful. I think it's because as a kid, I had my brother just telling me, you can't just mess up. You're in this now, you better just do better. I went back to school with a lot of, I call it venom, but it's positive venom. The way I was reading the books was quite different. I was reading it with purpose that this is my get out card. Right? So it was like, it's like, it was easy to just sit in the library hours on end because it was my get out card. That's my personal, experience, to be honest. But very quickly, the more you adhere to the rules of your mentor, the more you do what they ask you to do, the more you outgrow your mentor and move to the next mentor, is what I found. Initially with my brother. My brother was great. Even when I got to uni, I had a brother who came to see me every Saturday. He probably did not say a word to me, But it was just come to the region room, see me there, wave and go. And all he had told me is, I'm only going to do this for you in the first year. I know if you get your best results in the first year, the rest is going to be easy because success is self-reinforcing. We just wanted to make sure that I did not miss the first year. And truth be told, I got the grades that I needed in the first year. I loved the feeling. I wanted to get that feeling every year. He was right. He'd been through it. He knew what it was about. And that's where I saw the power of coaching. And I take coaching very seriously. But I think everybody on the call, even the best athletes have coaches. So who are you? Not to have one, or not to be open to being taught. As Ngozi said, that can come in the form of a book, it can come in the form of a person. But should you ever be offered a chance to be coached, don't think people are looking down on you. Take it. Opportunity in Africa, we don't even have therapists. Again, sometimes therapists perform a bit of the coaching work, but the truth is, even when you get a good coach, the coach is not telling you what to do. The coach is just helping you bring out what you're thinking and what your aspirations are. The best coaches don't tell you what to do, right? So take it. That was secondary school, university. Then, even in university, right? You're doing contract law. Someone else did contract law a year ago and he got an A. Why are you not having a conversation with him and asking, what did you do to get an A when this man was your lecturer? Simple. This guy did it last year. Why are you waiting, wasting your time, not just trying to reinvent the wheel? Someone else has done it. Ask him. Let him tell you. Did he use AI? Did he use ChatGPT? Did he use how many textbooks? What textbook? Did he just read his notes? Did he attend classes at all? Or was there a note somewhere that he read? You would save yourself quite a lot of time. Again, that's mentorship in university. Take different form. And then, but to stay in life, and as you go as a lawyer, some people call them sponsors, some people call them mentors. I grew up in an environment when I got into an industry where, the assessment was very formal, very, very formal, and brutal in certain cases. So it's up or out, right? So that's brutal. But as long as you said, as a Nigerian lawyer, you have the grit, you have that, it's hard work. You've been through it. For you to have gone to a Nigerian university and gotten a 2-1 and done your best, gotten the first, believe me, you can take whatever is coming. I'm not, you just being that open mind to learn. So you go in there, sometimes they give you formal mentors, but really you may learn more from the informal mentors. But be in search of them. The guy who, when you walk into his room and say hello, and wants to have a chat with you for the next 10 minutes, that guy is your better mentor than the formal mentor that the firm has given you. The formal mentor may not even like your guts, right? So people put in all this mentorship sessions. Yeah, I'm working this student with this guy because she is an AFDB, so therefore, yes, she can provide mentor to you. No, I think a mentor is someone who will be available for you when you need them. The guy who, when you're down, is coming to your office and saying, your demeanor is quite different today. What's wrong? There's something wrong, and is having a chat with you and is telling you how best to manage it. That, for me, will perform a better job than a mentor who is never available. But I'd also say that from pages where they only give you one-liners, I never knew I was going to work with Lanu Ajayi when I first sent Professor Ajayi my first email. And people like that, they respond to you one-liners. I got my PhD offer and my training contract offer at the same time. I was confused. It's great to be a PhD, but it's also great to be a training lawyer in the city. And I've been talking to him, he responds to me one-liners. So I sent him, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. And guess what he said? One-liner again, I don't care what you do. But that was enough instruction for me to find a way around making sure I did it. So sometimes, yeah, send those many emails. Not all of them will respond, but people who are going somewhere, people who know how life works, will typically generally respond to messages from go-getters. Sometimes it will lift you up and say, okay, this guy's already on the path, let me just help him. Let's say a few things to him. And if those guys who are responding, you should also then, keep a tab on them, keep a relationship going. I think as you said, don't let them see you as someone who just wants to use them. You call them to say, can we write an article together? There's this topic I'm thinking about. This is the first draft. You want to put an input into it, and then we can publish it together. What's your next interview? Do you want to help me write the first draft of it? And then you can take it to the next level. What are you offering that mentor who's taking time to try and mentor you, to provide something to you. He's made his time available to you. How are you making his life better? Are you just taking from him and not giving him? So I'll go back. Your mentors change as you progress. That's with my brother. He moved to the guys who were ahead of me. He moved to formal mentors. He moved to informal mentors. He moved to people that I just admired. And they all played different parts. But even the best of us require coaching. The best partners require coaching. So get one if you can. It's a great thing to be able to just bounce off your ideas on someone. So mentorship is great. I've benefited from it. It is determined, some of the most significant decisions I've taken has been through discussions about with people who I now look at as mentors, who may not necessarily see themselves as my mentors, but I make them know that I value their contributions to those issues that they make to me as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to also pick on something that you said in between before we close out this session. And please, anyone that's listening that has any questions, be sure to put that in the Q&A box so we can ask the panelists. I think you mentioned technology, and I really wanted to ask what trends you see that are like shaping the legal practice cross-jurisdictionally, right? In what ways do you either see new technology affecting it? How do you see this fast-paced industry that we're in? Are we going to be, are we no longer going to have jobs with advent of AI and the like? What do you see in your experience that can like foretell what the future of legal practice is going to look like? Anyone can start this off, and we'll just continue the conversation before we close out.
Yeah, I would say two things. First, I don't think my video is coming up. I think the operator has kind of shut me out. He doesn't want to see my face. If he can just bring my face out now again. But two things for me that I see as quite significant are AI and ESG. For me, it's the rate at which those two things are taking over the industry is quite significant. As you say, I'm in the energy space and infrastructure space. ESG and AI, significant impact in those two industries. When it comes to energy, we're talking about how sustainable our current practices. We're talking about energy transition. We're talking about how just those should be. We're talking about energy access, energy security, energy poverty, the unique place of Africa, the role of oil and gas in the future of the world. For countries like Nigeria and other African natural resources dependent countries, what that means for them. So there's lots of, what is being released every day on what the future is going to look like. Significant potential drop in prices of natural resources and that thing. So those kind of thoughts keep me up at night sometimes. And I think for someone in the energy space, it's quite significant, particularly when you go international. I think in Africa, we're not yet paying as much attention as we should. But I also think that the uniqueness of Africa needs to be further recognized in all of the discussions taking place. But I see the impact of ESG quite significant on practices that are international because it's traffic. And where AI comes in is AI can do a lot. If you've ever written, I've written 2 articles toward the end of last year, and I just put them back. I can just tell AI, rewrite this as an op-ed for economics, for the economists. And it brings it out, it's different. And then I change it, rewrite it as an op-ed for Washington Post. Something else comes out. You can see your thoughts are there, but something else is coming out each time. If you write a press release and you've written it in your own way, and you say, rewrite this as a press release to be released by one, analyst, it rewrites it for you. So it's really transformational. I don't think it will take over the role of lawyers, but I think it can complement what we do. I think it can make our lives easier. I think the law can be quite intricate, and the risk of one minute error would make it almost impossible to leave legal machinations in the hands of AI. You would always require, the input of someone with emotions, someone with, human touch to always moderate what it does. But it also means as lawyers, we can't stop learning. we can't just say we've gotten a law degree and that's the end of it.
Absolutely.
We need to upgrade our skills even in that space and be ready for what the future holds, because I see it could be potentially very significant, particularly for lawyers in places like Nigeria as well. So,
Absolutely. Thanks. Yes. So the human in the loop, it's very important that that's going to happen. But, AI isn't going away anytime soon. Ngozi, do you have any updates?
Yeah, sure. Mindful that we have, what, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I will say that how we're seeing AI, what I would say is that I think for all of us that thought of a big or the most important part of lawyering as documentation, I think AI has made it clear that we have to be more, that the lawyer's role has to be much less about documentation. I think AI is forcing us to see the nuances that are really our purview. Our work is going to be much more about structuring the deal. What do you want it to look like? How have you thought through the issues? AI is going to write and is writing our agreements much better drafted clauses. Even the finest drafters amongst us are getting a run for their money. But the thinking, the specificity of your transaction, that structuring is the muscle, is going to turn out to be our superpower. That's what I think AI is forcing us to reckon with.
Thank you. So we have a question here, and he asks that as a master's degree holder in international commercial law, currently resident in England, what formative materials and books can I get on in order to kickstart a career in corporate finance? Also, are there internships or real-time learning avenues that you could share to speed up my transitioning? I believe this is to you, Dr. Gabriel. So we could be mindful of time, so we can quickly give him an answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, the question was on international corporate finance, right? I'm a student of Professor Farron. She's one of the best writers that I know. She's a professor of the University of Cambridge. Our book is called Corporate Finance by Anne Farron. I would recommend it. It's the solid. Actually, if you're looking at things from the UK perspective, from what I hear you're doing an LLM, I'm hoping you're in England. I'm hoping you're trying to focus on common law. She's done excellent work there. There are also quite a number. So from those books, typically focus on the references. The references will then take you to other authoritative space, and wish you all the best in your marketing endeavors.
Thank you so much. And finally, what do you see your ties with the Nigerian Bar Association section on business law? What's going to strengthen, you're being a part of it and being part of this conversation? And how are you able to, keep on these conversations going? How do you see the NBA-SBL, actually strengthening their ties with you, either individually or as, your different corporate structures that you already have?
I'm a member of the NBA, first of all. I'm a member of the SBL. I pay my dues on an annual basis. Over the last 3 years, I have, and I intend to continue doing that. I'm a fan of what the SBL stands for and what is achieved on that doctorate feeling. I'm hoping that I can be a part of the future of the SBL as it goes forward. The Nigerian business industry is key to the success of Africa. And as lawyers advising those industries, we would have even better roles and bigger roles to play, like the AFCSTA kicks in. So I want to continue to retain my affiliation to the organization, be a part of it. From a diaspora perspective, I think Ngozi, and many people like us, should play a more active role. In fact, maybe we should meet the committee if we don't already have it, and participate more directly into the activities of the SBL, so that our impact and our input can be better felt and incorporated into the activities of the organization.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And Ngozi, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
I think what we're doing now, platforms like this, conversations like this, it might be interesting to see whether there is a role for SBL, including perhaps on its ESCO lawyers that live outside of Nigeria, and do some thinking around how that will be useful and how we can interface, but to keep the conversation going. Home is home, right? I think without meaning to speak for you, Gabriel, but I think at the heart of it, however far you travel, this is the beginning. This is home. You want to see more people that look like you in the spaces that we're in. We want to keep the conversation going. So yes, we'll keep doing what we're doing.
Thank you so much. Just one last one. I think we're right at the time, but I'm just going to quickly take this one. He says, or she says, I'm sorry, from the presentation, a lawyer's role is to garner knowledge, endure personal development, and have mentors. For cross-border transactions, how can one garner knowledge in a specific and new field, such as mining expropriation for precious metals? Okay, anyone wants to take this on?
Okay, I'd say do it. Take on the transaction that, say yes to a new thing. Say yes to an uncomfortable thing. So I'd say the experience over reading the book. I find that if you have an actual problem and you're trying to solve it, in that context, then read the text. But say yes to the transaction you've never done, in a sector you've never done. Take it on and then solve backwards. That's what I'll say. So if mining is where you want to get involved in, look for an opportunity to do a mining transaction, to get a license. And then in that context, read the text on mining.
Thank you so much. Dr. Gabriel, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think because it was spot on, nothing replaces.
Frozen.
Experience. Something you do have to finish your transaction, they'll rise in your mind. But once you do the fun, replaces experience. Books are good, but goods are better.
I'm sorry, Dr. Gabriel, but you're freezing. So we really can't hear you at the moment. Your screen is frozen.
So nothing replaces experience. You have, the more you'd also downplay, it'll come alive and you'd enjoy yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Because do you have any final thoughts? And then we'll wrap out and I'd say thank you.
Just to say thanks for having us. Just say thanks for having us. Thanks, Carrie. It was very nice to meet you, Gabriel.
Yeah, so his screen is frozen, but I'm sure he'll get the message as well. So thank you all so much. Thank you, the Nigerian Bar Association section of Business Law, for having us. This invitation was very timely. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation. Looking forward to more conversations of the sort and continued participation in the NBA-SBL. Thank you to the panelists. It was great. It was very interactive. We're like 2 minutes past the hour, so just want to say thank you for attending. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.